summer we're starting the EdTech Journeys on Tour, or the EduTravel podcast. First up is Pori. Let's roll. Peter Vesterbacka, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here on the podcast, and I know everyone knows a lot about your story, your public story. And I would like to start by going back maybe before your early days with Rovio and hear a little bit about your personal background.
Sure.
So, who was Peter Vesterbacka before starting at Rovio? And you can start whenever you feel.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as we're now actually sitting here in beautiful Pori, Finland. So this is actually where I grew up. So it's here on the West Coast of Finland. And I went to school here, and then I went to Turku, also on the West Coast, studied there at Aalto Academy, and then it's one of the Swedish-speaking Swedish language like universities here in Finland. So we have two national languages, Finnish and Swedish. So I studied there, and then after that I ended up working for HP in Silicon Valley in the US for a bit, and then so I can say that I started kind of like my entrepreneurial journey at the original startup, so kind of like the company that original tech startup, so the company that Bill and Dave started. So as Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, they started the company in their garage in Palo Alto, California in 1939. So before my time, I always have to say. But I met with actually Bill and Dave when they were still around. So they're fantastic entrepreneurs, because not only did they start HP, but they also started Silicon Valley. So then after Bill and Dave, we had Intel, Apple, Sergey and Larry. They met at Stanford, just like actually Bill and Dave, and then they started their company in their garage there in Silicon Valley. So that was Google. So that Sergey and Larry started. So in Silicon Valley, you always have this, that they start their company in a garage. And then so I worked at HP, and then I was doing business development for many years. First Finland, then Europe and Middle East, Africa, then world. Then I also started a program called the HP Bazaar. So that was like during the dotcom boom. So the idea was to make it easy for startups to work with this big corporation called HP. And then in 2003 I organized a game making competition. That was when our friends at Nokia came out with their first smartphones, the legendary 7650 and 3650, and then basically what happened was that three young guys from Aalto University, so students from there, Niklas, Kim and Jarno, they took part in this competition, won the competition, and the competition was like about making the best possible mobile multiplayer game. And then they won the competition, came to me because I was kind of the organizer, I was on the jury and all of that, and then say, okay, Peter, what should we do? We students here at Aalto, we won the competition, what should we do? So then I told them that, hey, you should do what you love to do, make games. So why don't you start a company to do exactly that, start making games. So they started Rovio in 2003. And then over the following 6 years, they made 51 games. And then the 52nd game that came out on 11th of December 2009 was Angry Birds. And then Angry Birds became pretty big. So actually became the fastest growing consumer brand. So not just a huge game, but also the fastest growing consumer brand ever. I mean, we had 93% of the Chinese population knew the brand, 91% of the Indian population knew the brand. So you could say that 9 out of 10 people on the planet knew the brand. And then at the early days of Rovio, told everybody there that hey, we're gonna go for like 100 million downloads, and then everybody told me that I'm crazy because nobody has done that, and at that time Tetris was like pretty much the biggest game ever, and not even Tetris had gotten to 100 million in there like 20 years. So then what we did is that then we agreed, okay, so let's like go for that, and then we actually got to the 100 million, which was supposed to be an impossible like task in 15 months, which was like much faster than even I thought that was like possible.
So what was your role to set that target? So you're transitioning to starting to actually work with Rovio and setting that target.
Yeah, so basically was asked to help with like North America for and then I said I can do that like a few days a month, no problem. And then part of that I said okay, I'll join like full time if we agree to go for this like 100 million, and then we did. So that's like kind of how that happened. So my role was that I was the Mighty Eagle at Rovio, Angry Birds. And the Mighty Eagle like title, basically just like in the game when you get stuck on a level, you call on the Mighty Eagle, and then basically the Mighty Eagle like swoops in and clears the level, and then you can like continue. So it's like a silver bullet to get you out of trouble, and my job was pretty much like that, so kind of like opening doors and making stuff happen. So that was kind of like what I did at Rovio, and then we managed to make that pretty big. Nowadays it's more than 5 billion downloads, and we got into consumer products, animation, made the movie. First movie came out in 2016, became #1 in 52 countries. And then I thought that was like good time to kind of like then start doing bigger things. So I left Rovio in 2016, and then okay, what could be bigger than Angry Birds? Okay, education is one thing that I very, very focused on.
So how did your interest in education start? Did you have already an interest in education? Or?
I'm a Finnish person, so it's like in our DNA. So right. I don't know, but no, it's just I think that it's.
But it's been a dedicated commitment still at some level, because then you have the Department of Learning inside Rovio.
And we did Rovio Learning together with Sanna Lukander, and she made that happen, and I think that was something that we then spun out of Rovio later. But anyway, so I mean we built a lot of that during Rovio years, and created this like fun learning approach and all of that. But I think that I've always been kind of a big believer in education. So and I mean Finland is a great example of that there's very few of us, but we managed to create amazing things like Linux and MySQL and Nokia and Angry Birds. So not too bad for a population of 5 million. I think that it starts with fantastic education, and then another thing that we're nowadays pretty good at is startup entrepreneurship, and that was also one thing that was involved with a little bit. So together with a few friends we started Slush in 2008. So Slush is the biggest and best startup event on the planet, and also with Slush, just like with Angry Birds, it's all about the brand. So with Angry Birds, I mean when you first hear the brand, it's like why are the birds angry, and then the brand is stuck in your head forever. So good brands work like that. And with Slush, I mean the world is full of these like what I would call wannabe Silicon Valley events. And it means that okay, you organize an event in, classical example in Beijing, and then you'll be told that okay, Beijing is the Silicon Valley of China, and then the following day go to Hangzhou, and this actually happened. I went to Hangzhou, and then Jack Ma, sings a song, okay, when he was still in public, and then after that the mayor of Hangzhou gets on stage and says that okay, Hangzhou is the Silicon Valley of China. So everybody wants to be Silicon Valley of this, Silicon Valley of that. And that's all like of course fun. Silicon Valley is a fantastic place, but you can't lead by following. So the Silicon Valley is already there. It's a great source of inspiration, a great source of like success stories, but it's there. So what we decided to do with Slush is that we organize Slush in Helsinki in November. And when you land in Helsinki in November, it's cold, it's dark, and there's slush on the ground. So it's very clear that it's not the Silicon Valley. It's better. It's much, much better because it's different. Okay, how is it different? We put young people in charge. So the whole event, the biggest startup event, the best startup event on the planet, organized, run by young people. And young people who are there, not because somebody told them, but they are there because they love to be there. They want to be there. So they are volunteering. They are there to make stuff happen. And the way it works with Slush is that the young people then, they learn how to build the biggest and best startup event. They do that for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and after that, they go out and build the biggest and best startups. And we have many, many examples of exactly that happening. So that was the whole idea with Slush. And we actually started Slush because I gave a talk to 600 Aalto University students in 2007. And I talked about startups and entrepreneurship. And then I asked the students, okay, how many of you guys are going to start a company or join a startup? And it's fine to do that once you graduate or even before, no problem. And then in 2007, out of 600 students, 3, only 3 raised their hand. So meaning that everybody else wanted to go and work for like Nokia, Wärtsilä, Kone, one of the big corporations, or the government. And I always say that there's nothing wrong with that, but it meant that everybody just wanted to maintain the status quo. And we all know that if everybody just works on maintaining the status quo, there's not going to be much progress, much development. And we need these, crazy entrepreneurs that believe that they can change the world. And it's a little bit, like what happened with the dinosaurs. I mean, not many dinosaurs around. The world was taken over by the small furry animals. So we need less dinosaurs, and I'm not saying that all big corporations or governments are dinosaurs, but there is a correlation there. So we need more of the small furry animals, the startups. And that's kind of like what we set out to do with Slush. We started Slush to change the mindset, change the attitude. That's why we started the Slush event. And as I said, doing that differently. But then with Slush, I think what is also very important, and it's always like with everything, that you have to do things like for a reason. And with Slush, it was not about building the biggest and best startup event. It was about changing the mindset. And 5 years after starting Slush, back to Aalto, same talk, same question, more than half the hands went up. And nowadays, when I go to any university in Finland, any high school in Finland, I ask the same question. More than half the hands go up. So we have done a massive, you could say cultural revolution, a huge mindset change in just a few years. And as a result, if you look at our part of the world, so what I always call the finest Bay Area, so it's we take Finn out of Finland and Est out of Estonia, so it really is facts based that it is the finest Bay Area. I mean, there are many Bay Areas around the world, the San Francisco Bay Area, home of Silicon Valley, Seattle Bay Area, that's like home of Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, bunch of great companies. You have Tokyo Bay Area, you have the Greater Bay Area in China, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Macau. That's where all the electronics in the world come from nowadays. So many Bay Areas, but there's only one finest Bay Area, and that would be us. And the finest Bay Area, so Finland, Estonia, Sweden, we have the highest number of startups anywhere on the planet per capita. We have the highest number of unicorns anywhere in the world per capita. And we also receive the most venture capital investment into local startups per capita. So if you look at OECD numbers from like 21, Estonia was number 1, Finland was number 2, Lithuania number 3, Sweden number 4, and the US number 5. So this part of the world is the most successful region anywhere on the planet when you look at those metrics. More successful than Silicon Valley, more successful than China. I mean, if you look at like just the number of unicorns, I think it's like super cool, because that's of course not every startup becomes a unicorn, but it's again, the unicorns are the companies that are worth more than $1 billion, and unlisted companies worth more than $1 billion. And I think that it's a good indicator also that not only are we good at starting companies, so the highest number of startups per capita, but we are also good at growing them. And I think that that is an indication of the maturity of the ecosystem. And I was actually in China before the pandemic, and then there was a professor from Tsinghua University, one of the best universities in China and actually all of Asia. And he was very happy with the fact that, okay, China, 200 unicorns, they're very, competitive with, US and Silicon Valley and like all of that. But then when you start doing the math, I mean, okay, 200 unicorns, but also 1.4 billion people, meaning that you need 7 million Chinese people to build just one unicorn. If you look at our friends in Estonia, 1.3 million people, 10 unicorns. So that you need like a few 100,000 people. So it's really like a staggering difference in the effectiveness. And if you look at then, take Slush like last year. We had hundreds of startups. We had, thousands, tens of thousands of people there. Everybody's there, but the very interesting indicator that it was the biggest gathering of venture capital any given time anywhere on the planet. So we had more than 1 trillion, so like 1,000 billion in venture capital gathered at Slush. And why is all that venture capital there? Because all the best startups are there. All the best startups are there because all the capital is there. So you get this like reinforcing kind of like very nice upward like spiral and not the downward one. So that's like super cool. And so basically one thing then that also a challenge that comes out of all of this success is that we have a huge shortage of talent. I mean, if you look at the games industry, I mean, we have the highest talent density anywhere on the planet when it comes to games here in Finland. A lot of the successful and actually the most successful games company like ever, Supercell, Helsinki based, and you have Rovio, obviously, Small Giant Games. You have a lot of unicorns like in the making, but hundreds of game startups. So we have the highest talent density. Okay, talent density can be like a bit of an abstract word, but what it means is that if I go to LA, I go to Hollywood, I go to the local Starbucks and I stop a random person there, and then I can ask him or her that, hey, tell me about your movie. What will happen? Okay, what will happen is that they will probably like start telling you that, yes, I've been working on this script for like 10 years and this is how it starts, and I'm thinking about having like Brad Pitt in the lead role. Or if they don't have a script, they will tell you that, yeah, I'm directing my third movie now, or I'm producing, or yes, I want to act, or whatever. So everybody's in that like ecosystem. So that's like the talent density. And if you do the same now in for example, Helsinki, go to the Starbucks, then you stop a random person and you ask him or her that, hey, could you tell me about your game? Then they will start telling you that, yeah, it's like this match 3 with RPG elements. I'm thinking about this, super cool new way of monetization, and this is how I'm gonna do it. So everybody's working on a game. So that's like talent density. And when you have a lot of talent density, people meet at Starbucks and then they will start discussing their seed round, Series A or whatever, and everybody's building a new company and the next big thing, the next like success story out of the finest Bay Area. So we are very focused on making sure that we have the highest talent density anywhere on the planet, not just in games. I mean, when I was working at Rovio, we had 47 different nationalities. We had people from Colombia, from Mexico, and the US, and China, and Turkey, and all over the place. And from Finland, obviously. But I think that that is very typical for the games and tech industry. And right now we have about 5,000 people in games, and we need 1,500 every year. And most of those people are, not here in Finland or in the finest Bay Area yet. So we need to find them and we need to bring them here. Then same thing in tech industry. We have a shortage of 13,000 people every year. So next 10 years we need to hire and bring to Finland 130,000 people just for tech. And the same is true if you look at across all our industries. We need a lot of talent, and we want to make sure that we have the highest talent density anywhere on the planet. And of course, the place with the highest talent density will win, and we think that that will be us. So that is like a big bet here. Okay, how are we achieving that? So one thing, we are doing some massive investments into infrastructure. So I'm involved in building a tunnel between Helsinki and Tallinn. It's a 103 kilometer long fast rail tunnel. Will reduce the travel time from currently 2 hours by ferry to 20 minutes, airport to airport. And that's like a 15 billion euro investment that will create massive growth on top of the tunnel. So like we have 4 station areas. They are designed for accommodating 50,000 new people coming to the area to live, to work, to study. And then one thing that is very important is like the study part here. So we're building what we call these triple-E campuses: education, entrepreneurship, entertainment. So it's kind of like these like small cities really, but it's to attract young people and to attract the talent. We have those in all the station areas along the west coast here in Finland, all the way up to like Kirkenes in Norway, or Kirkkoniemi as we call it in Finnish. It's again to attract the talent, and we are working on increasing the number of international university students at our universities from currently 20,000 to 150,000, and that will bring us up to par with the best nations on the planet if you use these metrics. So New Zealand, Australia, Canada, so they have over 2% of the whole population international students, and then 40,000 for Estonia, and bit over 200,000 is needed in something like that in Sweden. So like we need to really focus on bringing the talent, and then of course they will get to enjoy the fantastic jobs at the many of like the games companies, tech companies, other companies. So we can provide like fantastic working environment here after you finish your studies. But then another thing that we started to do, because we want to do this in a very sustainable manner. So we also wanted to start increase the number of international students at our high schools and vocational schools, because we looked at our competitors, and typically then there's hundreds of thousands of mainly Asian kids that they go to high school or vocational school in say Canada, and then they stay for university and life. And in Finland we have of course a bit of a challenge that we have Finnish and Swedish as our national languages, and most of our high schools, vocational school in those languages. So what we started doing 3 years ago, we started a company called Finest Future, and we actually started teaching young people in Vietnam and Uzbekistan Finnish language. And first year we had 15 high school kids, so they basically learned the language. It's very easy, took half a year to learn Finnish. So fortunately Finnish is one of the easiest languages to learn. So it's very logical, and you pronounce it the way it's written and like all of that. But anyway, so we taught them Finnish in half a year to be 1.1 level. Then they came here to Pori, Salo, Mänttä, Rantasalmi, Rautjärvi, Savitaipale and Taavetti, so locations around Finland, where actually one very important thing about Finnish education, which everybody knows is the best on the planet, and it's actually true. But did you know which school in Finland is the best school? Probably it's the nearest school, because it's always the school that is nearest to you that is the best school. Yes. So we can offer fantastic education no matter where in Finland you end up going. And then last year we had about 300 students come here, and this year is going to be 1,000. And the intent is now to scale this up to 30,000 high school and vocational schools coming to Finland every year. So we teach them Finnish and Swedish language. You come here, we offer you fantastic education and a happy life. So I always say that you come here for school and you stay here for the happy life, because everybody knows Finland, happiest nation on the planet 6 years running, and that's for a reason. So I think that it starts with a fantastic education. That here in Finland we decided to offer fantastic education, not just for a few but for all. And this is again for a small nation very important, that we can't lose anybody, we can't afford to lose anybody. So we believe in this that we want to allow and enable everybody to pursue happiness, because here in Finland we grew up watching American TV, American movies, so we learn about this thing called the American dream. You might have heard about it. And then we decided to make it kind of real, so that American dream is actually the Finnish reality. So here in Finland we made that American dream real. Anybody can be born anywhere, any condition, but you can also end up doing anything. You can be a young woman and you can run the country. You don't need to be 80-year old white male to do that. Some countries have rules for that, but here you can actually be young and you can be female and you can run the country. It's not illegal or anything. And I think that this is something that is really important, a big part of the happiness, that everybody has the opportunity to do whatever they want to do, and here in Finland we call it freedom. And as a coincidence, we have for many years had 100 out of 100 points on the Freedom House Freedom Index, I mean, just as an example, if you go to the US, they have 85 out of 100. I mean, that's also like okay-ish, but it's not like a perfect 100 out of 100. But I think that the difference here is that here in Finland we really value, freedom, democracy, equality, human rights. For us, those things are, would even say, like sacred and very important values. So I think that it's very important for us that everybody has access to fantastic education. Everybody has the opportunity to pursue happiness. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that Finland is the happiest nation on the planet 6 years running. So yeah.
Yeah, I would like to focus a little bit more actually on the Finest Future offering.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I would like to summarize and have you highlight a few points of the Slush success.
Right.
Because I think of it as a parallel to the success of the Finnish education system when it comes to the digitalization process, or let's say the application of technology in education. I've usually mentioned that the teachers in Finland are a strong pedagogical filter against what actually enters the classroom compared to many other countries, because they have a strong pedagogical training. And maybe Slush, I would like to hear your point of view here, since you actually created it in November, the worst month to be in Finland before Slush was born. That probably was then this entrepreneurial filter against, let's say, maybe fake entrepreneurs is not the right word, but people who try to build companies who don't really have the resistance or the real will to actually do it when it's the times are tough. So when you have the tough times, you create an event for the tough people come and they create great things. So you have a small movement starting the first year, and then that movement, let's say, continues based on that culture.
Yes.
And those who build the culture then attracts the right kind of people. So you don't have everyone, let's say, welcome the first month, whereas let's say in Silicon Valley or maybe Barcelona or these kind of places have a fantastic location, so it's very easy to go there and stay on the beach and start a company, let's say, half committed.
Yeah, sure.
What would be your comments on that as a part of the main filter against the entrepreneurship or the startups that actually take off?
Yeah, I think that it's probably because we can have like some pretty harsh conditions here. We have 4 seasons, and it's like cold and dark in the winter, and then it's light and warm in the summer, and then there's like spring and fall in between. So I think that that's probably one thing, but also I mean, I think one thing that plays into this, that the climate is features 4 seasons. Of course, we have the best indoor climate anywhere on the planet. It's always the same. It doesn't matter if it rains or shines outside. It's always the same inside, because our buildings are built properly. But I think also one thing with this resilience and like all of that is important. Like when you look at like building startups and all of this, is that we have always had this very strong need to make sure that we can make it on our own and we stay independent. I mean, we used to be under Swedish and then Russian rule, and then of course we have always been aware that we have a very evil neighbor in the east. So in Finland we have always been very aware of that, and I would say we even paranoid about that. So we can't expect anything else, and I think that this is also part of the national ethos and thinking that things are not always always great. We need to prepare for the worst, and I think that preparing for the worst is always a good thing also in a startup. That of course you need to plan for fantastic growth and all that, but you also need to take into consideration that things are not going to always work out. And I think that is very much like a Finnish thing, that we know that having an evil neighbor to the east, you need to be prepared. So.
And do you see that the young generation has that ethos equally strong?
Totally, yeah.
And
totally.
Beyond the startup community?
Yes, the whole, Finland is always ready. So I could say, some people say that Finland is not a nation, we're an army. But anyway, but we're we're always ready.
Yeah, but we would need to be more. So we have too few Finns in Finland.
We need more people. I mean, that's very clear. We have an aging population. We're the Japan of Europe. So we need to fix that, and we are. And this is what the Finest Future project, again, teaching the young people the Finnish and Swedish language, and then offering in return free education, free high school, free university. So learn the language, and then we will give you the best education on the planet.
But let's expand on the problem first, because I don't think people really appreciate the problem, because I see it also every day. I mean, my grandmother is still living here next to Pori in Rauma. She's 93 years old. And she's been retired since her early 50s, like 55 she was retired. She was working in this Oras factory and was very proud of her work. She would have loved to continue working, but no one thought she would live that many years.
Right.
So then the entire pension system doesn't really work to cater for these kind of people who live 40 years without working, and then them also suffering from their pensions not being high enough because they didn't work as much as they could have. And then every generation after that has less and less children, and then we don't now have one greater grandson here in Finland. She has two other ones. She has another that lives here in Finland, and then another in Holland. So in the Netherlands, so they moved. But really we have one, let's say, greater grandson for her that would be the taxpayer in the future. And that's not sustainable, because her generation was like 8-9 siblings. So can we, let's say, elaborate on this problem?
No, it's very simple that there are too many old people and not enough young people, and it's like the pyramid upside down, and basically we need to kind of like start fixing that so that the pyramid doesn't like topple and fall. So that is kind of like why we need to increase number of young people, and it's not possible to fix that overnight by just let's start giving birth to more kids, and that we don't see that happening anywhere in the developed nations. But then we also have the kind of like opposite problem. Many places that they have fast growing population, they can't offer the whole population fantastic education. So we can create a win-win by offering fantastic education to young people in countries where they don't have access to fantastic education otherwise. And I think that this is again the only sustainable way for us to address this demographic problem that we have. So it's really simple. Too many young old people, too few, or let's say compared to too few young people. And I think the main thing is that we don't have enough young people. So because of that, we have more than 20,000 starting slots that are high schools and vocational schools that are unfilled every year. Soon it will be 30,000. So we can offer 30,000 students each year access to fantastic tuition-free education, free high school, free university, and after that fantastic jobs, fantastic well-paying jobs, and a happy life here in Finland with fantastic work-life balance, because we don't work around the clock. We work and then we play, and we do that like all the time.
Yeah, for me also it seems very simple, and also being multicultural myself, I really value taking the best parts of every culture and try to work together as much as possible.
True.
And but then there are still resistance. There are people who don't really see it the same way. And what has been your experiences when it comes to the failure to understand this simple puzzle?
I think that basically we just need to keep like hammering the message through and kind of like explaining why this is important, why it's the most important thing for building this like finest future for Finland and for the region. And I always say that it's as simple as that like young people are the future, old people die. It's biology. So we need to kind of like keep working on this, and that's kind of like what we're doing on many fronts. With Finest Future, we have Edunation that is working on bringing more international university students to Finland. So we have many different companies, and I think that's also the only sustainable way of doing this, is that we have companies working in close collaboration with the various government ministries and other institutions. So I think that also one thing that we are pretty good at in Finland is private public like partnerships. So that's what we need to do, and I need to go pretty soon. So
thank you very much. I'd be very happy to collaborate on this project with the Finest Future. Any final words about this Suomi Arena event, highlights?
No, I think Suomi Arena is fantastic. Met with many of our ministers and many of our movers and shakers here in Finland. So it was a very good event, and I highly recommend everybody to come here next year as well.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.